Hello, everybody. Hi. That's me. I'm Laura. Those are my two books. Because I wrote books because I make terrible life decisions, but good product decisions. I just want to do real quick, I'm not going to be able to get to know each of you personally, unfortunately, but I want to know a little bit about who y'all are. So who here considers themselves a product person? Any designers? One lonely designer? Hi. Welcome. Engineers? Okay. Marketing? No, marketing. Sales? Cool. All right. I don't trust any of you. Anything else?
How about scientists?
Scientist? Ooh. Ooh. Fancy. I love it. Okay. All right. So here is what we are going to do today. We're going to be doing a few different activities. We're going to be talking about picking the right features for your product. We're going to be talking about uncovering hidden complexity in the things that you decide to build, and how to create buildable designs. So if any of that doesn't sound appealing to you, we're going to be doing 3 little activities. If any of that doesn't sound appealing to you, I will not be sad if you leave. Like, now is a great time to leave if any of that sounds like, not really what I signed up for. Okay? Or at any point, really. I want you all to get stuff out of it. So I know it's about prioritization and complexity and all that, and I am not going to prioritize anybody's backlog. I don't even want to do that to mine. I cannot tell you how complicated something will be. I can help you figure that out. But you can do that. And I think that one of the big issues that we run into, and by we I mean me, when we're building products is that we can design really aspirational things that look really good on paper and then take 1,000 years and never actually get built. And I would like to change that. And I know that actually figuring out how hard something's going to be is something that we have all decided as an industry is completely impossible. I'm going to give you some activities that will make it slightly more possible. So the first thing that I want to talk about is actually finding the right features to build, right? Actually prioritizing things. So I have a question for you. How do you, and this is going to be an interactive session. How do you currently pick features? How do you decide what is the next thing you are going to build on your product? Anyone?
Customer requests.
Customer requests. They just ask for it and you go, sure, and build it.
Well, no.
Okay. Good, because that's something people do. What do you mean by customer requests?
If we get a certain, I don't even know what the number is, but I know that if we get a certain number of the same requests, we start to consider building it.
Okay.
And sometimes we do.
So you get some requests and they're the same, and so then you start going like, maybe that's a good idea, and maybe I'll investigate it. Okay, great. Who else? Anyone? Yes. ROI. That's. Sure, so you try to identify low-hanging fruit that might make a big difference. Okay, great. Who else? Yes?
Promise things to customers.
Oh, somebody in sales said, oh yeah, we can totally build that. Great, all right, Has anybody worked in a large company? Tell me about how they picked features there. No one did. Just whoever shouts the loudest in meetings, or they just evolved spontaneously. Okay, who else?
You do market research to try to find out what consumers want or what the next big breakthrough is.
Market research, so surveys. Okay, one more?
New companies that were requiring.
Oh, yeah, new companies that were required, or as they call it, outsourcing your innovation. You guys do it, you just get back to me. That'll be great. Okay, here are some of the ones that I have heard when I ask that question. The CEO wants it. I love that one. Like, why do we build this? Well, the CEO asked for it. We got to use this. Okay. Our biggest customer asked for it. Our competitors have it. It's a checkbox. We have to have it for a checkbox. If anybody's worked at a big company, they've heard that. I guarantee it. It's on the backlog where it spontaneously appeared one day. a stakeholder said it was necessary, so somebody in some other part of the company came up with a genius idea, and we had to build it. And it'll help us get funded, which I'm going to go out on a limb and say is not actually a terrible reason to build a feature, but it's a terrible reason to build all of your features. How have some of those gone for you? I mean, in my experience, those don't go great, right? So let's talk a little bit about what's gone wrong when you pick features this way. I just want to kind of hear, anybody have any disaster stories? I love disaster stories about you just pick the wrong feature, man.
Committing to a solution before you don't understand the problem.
Oh, committing to a solution before you understand the problem. Tell me about that. Tell me the story. Yeah, you do. You raised your hand. That's how it works.
Understanding a generalized problem, sensing that it is widely felt, which was the case, but just not understanding the problem to the depths that we're looking to identify an MVP, identify the riskiest assumption, make an accurate estimate of how much time it's going to take.
So just kind of jumping to solutioneering?
Yes.
Yeah, without really getting what the actual problem was or how much it'll cost you to deal with it, to actually solve it well. Anyone else? Anyone have any good disaster stories?
The boss tells you to work on something, you spend months working on it, and the boss comes to ask you what you're working on, and you say, I'm working on the thing you told me to do. And you're like, I didn't tell you to do that.
Oh, the boss with the short-term memory loss. But like, wouldn't it be, and this is actually a thing, right? This is that, a CEO swoops into a meeting, says, we need more AI. All of a sudden, that means, oh shit, we're going to build more AI. So you run off and start building, and then it's like, what are you doing? Why are you spending all this time and money on this? You said, yeah, this is a serious problem.
We spent $2 million on a beautiful cinematic and creative resources building a cinematic as basically onboarding to our app experience, and customers were really disappointed when that wasn't the actual experience. It was just
That's a good one. So you built something that was so beautiful that you couldn't live up to it. Oh man, $2 million to onboard people and then disappoint them. Wow, I'm sorry. That sucks.
I'm an engineer though. I wasn't.
Oh, no, not my fault. I didn't spend my $2 million. Okay, I get it, sure. Okay, so I'm gonna give you this is a fun, quick little activity that I fully expect you all to use in your next meeting. When you are all arguing for 4 hours about what you are going to build next. This is a wonderful exercise to use for people that I like to call idea generators. There is nothing wrong with idea generators. It is important to have people who can generate ideas. It is, however, important to have people who can generate ideas and who understand what those ideas actually imply and what solution you're actually suggesting and whether there is even a problem that it is dealing with. So what I want you to think about the next time you or somebody else says, we need to build, give me a feature, name a feature. Anyone?
Push notifications.
What was that?
Push notifications.
Push notifications, love it. We need to build push notifications. Those are super important. That is the thing we are building next. Here's the thing, push notifications, who cares, right? Like building push notifications is not actually what we want, right? As you might know. We do not want push notifications. Nobody wants push notifications. What people want is some change in behavior, right? That is our goal. Our goal as a company is to change users' behavior in a way that positively impacts our metrics. So we want whatever push notifications will give us. The feature, push notifications in this case, that is the trigger for the behavior change that we want to see that relates to a metric. See, when you know the actual goal, which for us is the metric, you can think up a lot of sometimes better features that could work. So I always use recommendations because it's an easy one to add. So when people say, let's add recommendations, What they might mean is we want to increase the average order size of something. We want to get people to buy more stuff, right? And our hypothesis is that a recommendation engine will encourage people to buy more things that, to discover more things that they like and buy them. So every time somebody comes to you and says, we need to build X, your goal is to say, what does that get us as a business? And also, because we are ethical human beings, what does that do for our user, and how does it positively impact both of us? How does it positively impact the behavior of our users in a way that positively impacts our business? So I call this walking it up and back down. Somebody comes and says, I need product recommendations. Your goal then is to say, what outcome are you looking for? What metric is this going to affect? Well, we think it's going to give us more sales per customer. Fantastic. What's the behavior that causes that improvement? More sales per customer doesn't just happen, right? It requires some effort on the part of the person, the user. Well, the behavior that we actually want to incentivize is to check out with more items in the cart. Fantastic. The metric is increased average order size. What other features could we build that might do that? And it comes down, what it lets us do is it lets us look at the ROI across lots of different features as opposed to in isolation. So here are some other things we might do. Maybe we offer 10% off the second item. Maybe we create gift packs. Maybe we do upsell. You want fries with that? Or you want to supersize that, right? Maybe we get people to send something to a friend. Maybe we pre-sell subscriptions. I don't know. There's lots of different options of things that we could use to create the behavior that gives us the outcome that we want. This is incredibly important because when somebody says we need to do push notifications, or we need to do recommendations, or we need to do feature X, it's incredibly important to think, what do I think I'm actually going to get from that? And is there just a much easier way to do it? So I want you, this is a time for you to sort of think about what the last feature your team built was. Just take 10 seconds. What was the last thing that you worked on? What metrics were you hoping to move? And how are you measuring to see if it worked? Does anybody have a good example of this where they can say, the last feature we built was X, we were really hoping to improve Y, and this is how we're measuring it? Yes?
We have a support team that does routinely manual tasks for customers.
Mm-hmm.
And we built a system to automate that process so that they wouldn't spend 3 hours out of their day.
So you built an internal tool for support people to make it less manual. I just want to say bless you. That is a thing that many people do not think about, but they're an important stakeholder. Okay, how do you measure whether it worked?
Whether they've stopped spending the time that they previously were.
So does it take them less time to do the same thing? Fantastic. Anybody have a bad example where they built something and you're not really sure what the metrics were that you're hoping to move, and you're not really measuring it because you don't really know what to measure? Someone? Anyone? Come on. Yes?
This is a feature, we haven't built it yet.
Mm-hmm.
iOS compatibility, we're Android only right now.
Uh-huh. So iOS compatibility.
Metrics we're hoping to move is increased sales.
Increase sales? Uh-huh.
I think that might be a potentially bad metric because there's other ways to do that.
Okay. Really interesting. So right now you're Android only. You're going to move to a whole other platform to increase sales. Maybe there are other ways to increase sales that don't require nearly that much work. Or maybe there aren't. Might be great, hard to say. That's a big risky one. So of course the next thing that you think about is, okay, well, how might we test that before just moving to it? But yeah, that's tricky. So the next question that you need to ask yourself, because I think it's very important to be a little bit backward looking when we're doing this, because it's often hard to do this. It's often hard to start by doing this for the future, because everybody gets so excited about, oh, it's the new feature and it's very exciting and it's all designed and we're going to build it. So think back to the last feature that you built, and I want you to really think about, like, be honest, is there something that you could have built instead? Is there something I will tell you right now, I do this for a living. I build products and design stuff all the time, every single day. I can absolutely name things that I would have not built the way I built originally. I was working with a company, and they really wanted, again, it was a cool onboarding flow. It was an onboarding flow to get a very specific type of user, to get a whole bunch of their data just automatically, added to the product. And so we built this like really super easy to use importing tool that like could take data in all sorts of different, formats, and that we had to do all this error checking, and we had to import it. We had to like let them know when it was all imported, and we had to make sure that it got in correctly, and blah 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 blah. And in the end, it turned out that our professional services people just did it for them. But we had a really, really great onboard experience where, like, if you don't have something that you want to import, like, you could just put them in one at a time. It was all totally customer facing. It was super easy to use. People loved it. And when it came down to it, they would just send us the data, and we would put it into a spreadsheet and just put it in with a script. Would have been a lot faster to do that in the first place. So you got to think to yourself, given the things that I know now, what would I have built instead? And is there a way that I can do that in the future? And the thing is that when you know what the actual goal is, the goal, again, isn't an onboarding flow. The goal isn't push notifications. The goal isn't recommendations. The goal is whatever the behavior is. For us, it was getting all of that data into the system. And there were a million ways to get all of that data into the system that would have taken so much less time. We don't need to discuss that. We discussed it. So the next thing that we are going to talk about is once you actually have a feature and maybe you have a design for it, I'm going to give you a little activity so that you can understand a little bit about what it'll actually take to build it. Because like I said, who here has maybe looked at a design and been like, oh yeah, that'll take a week. And then it took a month. 2 months? 6 months? Oh, you guys are good. I've literally seen things take years longer. I mean, some of it's scope creep, obviously, but some of it is just people, I think, don't take a look at what the whole thing is that they need to build. So if you got one of the handouts, now is the time to turn it over, and it's going to be super weird looking. This is a fake product page. If you don't have one, you can cheat off a friend. It's great if you have a pen so that you can actually mock it up. This is a fake product page, as you'll see, for a company called Snacks for Pets, which I use as an example because it's a fake product that everybody can understand, and also because I own the domain name. So it's 100% true. It's the sibling to Jobs for Pets, which I also own. This is going to allow you to buy curated artisanal treats for your best friend. So what I want you to do is I want you to look at this. Don't read the text, it's lunacy. But I want you to look at this, and I want you to think to yourself, what pieces of this page are created by the system, and what pieces of this page are maybe created by humans or need to be changed at some point. Like anything that didn't get there because you hard-coded it into the system. So an example is that delightful picture of a cat, right? That's, of course, the branding for the for Snacks for Pets. That's not going to be on every page. There's going to be a different product picture for every different snack, right? Maybe the description of that particular thing. So go through and literally circle everything that is what I call an output of the system. It's an output of the system, but it is not something that is actually in code, right? This is something that somebody somewhere has to get into the system. And it might change, and there might be dozens of them. So go ahead and do that. while you're doing that, I also want you to circle anything with which a user might interact. Anything that's sort of going to be, any content, anything that's added later, anything that might vary from product page to product page. Yeah, it's not actually like code, right? It could change later without anything that could change without pushing to production. If that helps. So you're looking for things that have to come from somewhere after you've already created it. I also want you to, like I said, anything user generated, also circle that. Anything user generated or anything that a user might interact with. I will give you a hint. This Sir Snugglepuss comment does not show up on every page. It is not in code. It gets added later. Hopefully you've circled almost everything on this page. Okay, probably the tagline for pets, and the artisanal, which I know is spelled wrong. It's actually spelled wrong in my book too. Hopefully those are actually in, like that's about your company, right? If you had a nav bar maybe, which I don't have on here, maybe that would be in code. But everything else about this changes, right? So why does that matter? Who cares? Seriously, anyone? Anyone have any idea why I'm talking about this, or do I just really enjoy snacks for pets? It is a lot of work. Why is it a lot of work? Because you have to change it. Who has to change it? We hire people for that.
Oftentimes, if you only test with 1 or 2 examples, but then you have inventory of over 5,000 products, it's not all going to look that way.
Oh, I love that. So, yes. This is actually a different topic that I wasn't going to cover, but is a great point, which is if you have 5,000 products, some of them might have stupid names. I like to call this the problem of not everybody has 4-letter names, right? Anybody who doesn't have a 4-letter name is going like, yes, I get it. I have been in a system where I couldn't input my entire first name, right? This is an issue. So that is a big thing. What we are going to do is we are going to get into why this matters a little bit more. But the reason that this is incredibly important is that every single piece of data that you circled implies that there is a whole system behind it, possibly a product, possibly an internal tool that you created for your CS people, which is for your customer service people, which is great because you thought about them, for somebody to be able to go in and do this work. And people, especially, I'm not going to pick on the one designer in the room because I'm the other designer in the room, but people, especially when you're doing things like creating mock-ups or creating visual designs of something, we often forget that everything on this page has to come from somewhere, and those systems can be far, far, far more complicated than creating this page. You can look at this page and go, that will take me 10 minutes. And it might. But creating the system that works behind that, creating the thing that lets you put in the images, creating the thing that lets you set the prices, creating the thing that lets you change the description, creating the thing that lets you put in the recommendations. Those all also take time, and those need to be considered when you are making your ROI calculations. And I call this X implies Y, which is another activity that we're going to use to kind of go through this to understand how long that feature actually would take. So let's talk just about the recommendation, or sorry, the comments part of this page, right? I had a little comment section, threw it in the bottom. Maybe we could just throw discuss in there. That's fine. Whatever. Maybe we don't. Maybe we decide to write our own. Fantastic. This looks really standard. Very easy. Everybody's got one of these. So let's talk about one thing on here. Let's talk about that flag. How hard is that to implement? It's an icon, some text. Super easy, right? Yeah? I mean, you know it isn't, because I wouldn't be setting you up like this if it were. So let's talk about that flag. Let's talk about how that flag is a giant nightmare of proportions that you can't even begin to understand unless you have ever worked with user-generated content. Because, oh my God. What does that flag imply? When a user pushes that button, what is their intent? What do they expect? What do they want? Anyone? A response. Oh God, I have to actually think about it. Okay, what else do they want? What is their goal? To be seen. A warning. To get the comment removed. Okay, so what needs to happen for that to work? I push the button. Fantastic. Yes? Some kind of content moderating department. Wow, you have just added an entire section to the company, sir. Like, ah! I gotta hire people?
You just hide the comment for that user, problem solved.
I know, I could just hide the comment for the user. Wow, suddenly my Snacks for Pets page is covered with advertisements for penis enlargement. That's fantastic. So this is a thing that I think what you need to do when you have taken your mock-up or your screen or whatever it is, and you have circled all of your inputs and your outputs and your interactions and all of these things, you actually need to go through every single one of those elements, every single thing that you have circled. And you need to understand who are the actors that are going to be interacting with this particular thing, who is going to make these things happen, what is the actual user intent for any of these interactions, what are all the steps that need to happen in order to make that user intent come true. Because flagging, this is when I say X implies Y, that little flag icon implies a system that notifies somebody when a comment is actually flagged, right? It's not, I mean, yeah, I hit a flag in the, I can set it to this comment was flagged in the database. That's super easy. I also need to tell somebody that the comment was flagged. I also need a policy for dealing with flags, probably. Maybe a person whose job it is to actually deal with them, and the entire admin system that lets people deal with that flag. That's an awful lot for this thing that just looks like a little icon. And I know that this is kind of a silly small example, but I'm telling you, every single damn thing that you add to a screen, every single little icon or every single little, anything that isn't basically just in code has this. It has a whole ecosystem and life of its own that you need to support it. And I know that that seems sort of grandiose maybe, but I'm telling you, you will be shocked at how hard it is for every single little thing that isn't just in code. So let's do it together. This is kind of a fun one because the co-creator of these slides and my co-teacher often found apparently a site that sells taxidermied unicorns. So there you go. So take a look at this. What would require a whole system on this page? What is required? Yes? Inventory management, a whole inventory management system. So we need a way to get to know how many of these things exist. We need a way to know how many colors this unicorn head comes in. We need a way to know whether we can get the white unicorn with the gold horn, or if we can customize and have a a pink unicorn with a silver horn. Does that exist? Can we make it? If not, how do we put that in? That seems kind of complicated, right? Inventory management, we got to know that we don't have any more of the flower accessories. Those are gone, man. You can't let people buy those. They're going to be so disappointed. I mean, not like $2 million onboarding system disappointed, but pretty disappointed. All right, if I don't get my flower accessory. What else? Anything else?
Maker account management?
Maker account management. Oh, tell me about that.
Well, it appears that you can get this from this particular maker, but on the rest of the site, there's going to be other makers we can assume from other locations with other contact information. We got to manage those people on every level that they manage.
Right, we have to manage all of those people. And these are people who make taxidermied unicorn heads. So we're going to imagine that they're maybe not the easiest to manage. No judgments, because this is 100% the kind of thing I would do. Yeah, so there's a whole maker system that we need just to get people to submit the thing that they want to sell. And we need to be able to tell them that they cannot sell that here, or yes, please, we would like more of those. And they need to be able to update it. Yes?
Coupon codes and purchasing.
Coupon codes and purchasing. We're not just sell it all for full price. So we need to, okay, coupon codes. And who sets those coupons? Is it the makers? Is it us? Is it both? Do we have to have a whole system for that? Christ, this is shipping. Oh, shipping logistics. I gotta have a place to store these unicorn heads. Those aren't small. They're full size. Whatever size, I have no idea how big a unicorn is. Anybody who does is lying. But what else?
I mean, you'd have to be able to figure out when the estimated delivery date would be
The
based on like how long it'll take the maker to make the unicorn and stuff like that.
Oh God, yeah. What if these are custom unicorn heads? It might take a really long time to carve one of these out of alabaster. So we need to know that, as opposed to the ones who are just like 3D printing them, which is, I mean, those you can get those anywhere. What's that?
The gestation period.
The gestation, oh my God, yeah, if I have to go out and hunt the unicorn, I mean, that could be really variable. That's super hard. Okay, so those are all also systems that need to be created and designed and noticed, right? And believe me, if you go out, and this is the thing that I actually see a lot of times, if you go out and you hire, I am going to throw a bunch of my fellow designers under the bus here. So there's only one, it's just you and me, so we're good. If you go out and you hire a design agency to create you this system, a lot of times they'll come back with something like this and it'll look awesome. And what they will not come back with is they will not come back with all of the things that we are talking about here and all of the things that we are noticing, which is how do I deal with the makers? What's the system there? How do I deal with the inventory? What's the system there? What about coupon codes? Who sets those? What are the policies? What do I do if somebody submits something that is, let's say, wildly inappropriate, which PS, they 100% will, right? How do I do all of this stuff? You can do it on this page too, because there's more. There's even, but wait, there's more. There's a special fun one on here that you get to deal with. What's the thing on here that happens later? Give you a hint. Yeah. Filtering, searching, information architecture, right? Faux taxidermy is an entire section of this website somehow. It may be actually the entire website. I don't know. I don't go there. Uh-huh.
Customizable is the one that scares me.
Customizable is the one that scares you. But why?
Because like that system is probably going to be very complicated to handle the customization.
I want the black faux moose head, but I want it in bronze and I want it with different antlers.
How much does it cost? When's it going to be shipped? Who's making it?
Oh my God. If you're allowing people to customize, does that mean that I have to make it so that you, the buyer, can talk to you, the moose hunter? Is that a thing I need to do? Do I need to have an entire conversational system that passes messages back and forth between people? The answer is yes, I do. If I am going to let people customize their black faux moose heads. This is just a little tip that is totally unrelated to this, but I will tell you right now. That whole side there where there's stuff that people can add, if you let your users add categories themselves, you will at some point end up with 3 different categories of vampire dress. I've literally seen that happen. It was 3 categories, 3 different categories, all called some version of vampire dress. What I'm saying is that user-generated content, and especially user-generated categorization and tags, if you are displaying them to the rest of the world, are incredibly difficult, and it implies that you need some system on your end as the maker to deal with that and make it not impossible to deal with. So all sorts of fun things for a page that looks really, really, really simple. Like, everybody's got this page. This is not a surprising page. And of course, there are companies that do this for you. But if you are the one who is building the system, these are all things that you have to think about and deal with. Are you tired of looking at unicorn heads? I mean, I could never get tired of it, so I just like to check in that you guys are okay. All right. The most important thing for you to think about when you are looking at your designs, when you are looking at your features, when you're looking at your products, and you're trying to understand how hard is this actually going to be, is what else do I have to build for this feature to actually work? And by work, I mean to fulfill the actual intent of the user of the system, to fill the actual intent of the stakeholders of the system. What other pieces of it need to be built in order to make this a thing? So, yeah, questions. Let's talk about this. Who has questions about any of this activity, the activities before this? Someone has to, because seriously, otherwise we'll just go get snacks. Yeah.
So I'm interested in how you think about the integrated system and, I'm thinking about what else has to work to make this happen. So if you have something that I can't just remove that part, it doesn't make sense anymore, but you have to think about a way to roadmap out.
Yeah, integrated systems. So I'm going to ask you a quick question. How do you deal with integrated systems? Sorry, when I repeat stuff, it's for the camera. And also just to make sure that I understand. How do you deal with something where it's like, if I remove that, everything falls apart? By integrated systems, do you mean just that, or do you also mean if you're integrating something from somebody else? Because those are both issues that we run into a lot these days with, we're going to use this other system for chat, and we're going to use this other system for inventory management. And do you mean the first one? Okay. How do you think about if we remove that, everything falls apart? So it turns out the flag example is fantastic. The flag example, if I do say so myself, which I just did, the flag example is really useful because if you are going to have user-generated content and you are not going to have moderators who look at every single piece of user-generated content as it comes in and give it a yes or a no, you need some kind of flagging system. You need some way of dealing with bad actors. You must have it, really. You may not need to have it immediately if you have a very small, for example, beta group, or potentially if it's like a very small internal tool where if somebody does something terrible, you fire them, which is, that's still a policy that you need to have, but these are things that you will need to have eventually if you scale. So how do you think about them? How do you deal with them? You need to go through and you need to identify, if we were just to yank this, what would the implications of that be? And in the case of the flagging one, the implications are actually pretty bad, right? Like it's a big feature. It's hard. You don't have any choice. Your choice actually is don't allow user-generated content. So really, it's a great question because when you're thinking about features, is the feature the flag button or is the feature the comment section? I would argue that the feature is the comment section, and you can only pull that. So that's your question, is what do we so at that point, what you would do is you would go back to your initial activity, which is, well, what do we think we're going to get out of comments anyway? Is there a different way to get that? One of the things that I've seen, especially for brand new companies, is what if we just went out and we solicited comments from people and we just got them to give us good comments and we put them on there as testimonials? Could we get the same benefits, whatever those benefits are, whatever you think those benefits are going to be to your company? Could we get those same benefits by carefully soliciting testimonials from people and just sticking them on the page? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe people feel like that's not as authentic. Depends on who your users are. Depends on what you're trying to get out of it. So I think that that's a great question. When you do this exercise and you go, oh my God, this one thing, it's like, the whole thing is going to take a week, and then this other part of it's going to take 6 months. What could we do instead of that 6-month thing? And that's a conversation that you need to have with your team, which, I mean, I know, I hate talking to people too, but no choice. Other questions?
There's sometimes the issue of the unknowns that you didn't anticipate. So you went through and circled everything and said, okay, we need to do X, Y, Z, and then
Unknown unknowns.
Yeah.
Very Rumsfeldian of you.
Like,
Yeah.
into development, and you're like, okay, now what?
Yeah. Yes. So every activity that I give you, every activity in my book, big plug, is the goal of these activities is to help you reduce risk. Unfortunately, there's no activity that I can give you that will eliminate risk until we learn how to tell the future, which would be great. And if anybody's working on that, let me know. See me after. That would be fantastic. But what I have found is that this particular set of activities will help you mitigate the risk somewhat and will give you sort of a tool set for thinking through, is this the right thing to build? Why? Are there other options? Given that this is the thing that I think I want to build, how hard will it actually be? It basically gives you a way to think about what the R and what the I are in ROI, which is super useful, it turns out. Both of those are super great to know. So it'll help. You will still find technical problems. You will still find things where, oh, but the database wasn't set up to support this kind of behavior. Because it's engineering and it's humans. But these will actually help. Yes?
Since you talked about risk and complexity, could you comment on privacy and GDPR?
Oh, I have all sorts of comments about GDPR. Actually, yes. No. So privacy, I like to think of privacy as separate from GDPR because I think that GDPR is solving a very specific problem that is very important. I am very much of the opinion that design, specifically UX design, has great power, and with that power comes great responsibility. And that when we think about the triggers that we want to give people, and when we think about the behavior that we want to create, we need to think about that holistically, and we need to create behaviors that holistically our users would be happy to have. So you need to understand really what the implication, what the privacy implications are for your company. I'm going to be kind of vague about this because it's a hard question to answer. You need to understand and make users know what the privacy implications are of what they are doing. There's a thing in user experience design called dark patterns. Has everybody heard of dark patterns? Has anyone not heard of dark patterns? Okay, they're important to understand. Dark patterns are basically tricking users into doing things that they would not otherwise do. There is a way to do this, right? There are lots of ways that I can get you as a user to agree to do the things that you wouldn't otherwise agree to if you actually knew what you were agreeing to. And I am 100% against actually using those. I'm a big fan of understanding what they are so that we can avoid them, but you always need to ask yourself, is this good for the company? And also, is this ultimately good for the user? And these days, I'm going to just say, we also need to think, is this good for the user's community in general? I think we need to do this to be ethical actors in society, and that's not what this talk is about, but I think it's important to think about. So, like I said, I don't want to talk specifically about GDPR, although I think one of the things that GDPR gets pretty right, although I don't know that people are implementing it that well, is letting people know in human understandable language what you're actually doing with their data, right? Because I think a lot of times I think I'm giving you my data and you're going to store it for me, or you're going to just show it to my friends. But if the answer is you're going to store it for me and you're just going to show it to my friends, but also hidden in 1,000 pages of tiny text, the answer is also, oh, and by the way, I'm also going to sell it to a whole bunch of people that you don't know about, because that's my business model, and you should just understand that as a human. I think that's one of the things that GDPR is trying to address, and I think it's a good thing to try to address that, because there are a lot of things that I think people wouldn't necessarily agree to, that they are agreeing to because they don't understand. And you know what? I'm not saying that in a dismissive way. People don't understand this stuff. It's hard. It's complicated. Smart people don't understand this stuff. They're busy doing other stuff. So making it really obvious, you're giving me this, and I'm going to give you this, and there's no hidden stuff here, is, I think, a really important part of an ethical value exchange. I promise no more soapbox, unless you make me. In which case I will. What else? Any other questions?
Yeah.
Yes?
Do you have any sort of general comments about what to do when you don't have users yet? So you talk about, how are we going to measure this? Are we going to get increased sales? We're going to do A/B testing. You're kind of assuming a consumer product, not a B2B product. You're kind of,
I disagree with that, but go on.
You're assuming a certain scale.
I am assuming that you have any users, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Or the feature could be intended to get you your first users, and that is how you are going to measure it. When I say measure, I don't necessarily mean, a statistically significant quantitative A/B study, although sometimes I do. Sometimes I just mean, the goal of this feature is to get us 10 new big customers. Did it work? Did it not work? A lot of qualitative work that can be done there. What do you do before you have users? A lot of user research. A lot of understanding what the problems are that people are trying to solve, a lot of understanding what their context is and how they might use something. That's an entirely different talk, but it is incredibly important. And I think the answer is to get some folks in your target audience that you can work with on a regular basis, so that you are at least getting some feedback, and you are at least, like I said, the goals or the metrics could just be getting 5 people really excited about this. I mean, it can't be that for a long time, but.
Trying to over-specialize to 2 customers paying you a lot.
That is, yes, you do not want to over-specialize to 2 customers, so you want to be able to, one of your goals might be, how do I find a large group of people who are also interested in the concept that I am working on? 10 minutes, okay, great. Yes?
So you've talked about some of these tactics, and I'm curious, who should be in the room, right?
Oh, I love this
In your
question.
opinion,
Yeah.
who should be in the room?
Who should be in the room to actually do this stuff?
Correct.
Yes.
What type of role?
Who makes,
At different organizations?
yeah, who makes product decisions?
Does it totally make sense?
I would argue that we all make product decisions. I have a model, it's the last chapter of the book, it's a spoiler, I have a model that I like to go with when I'm building teams, which is the heist team, because I really like heist movies. But if anybody's seen Oceans 11 through 13, you can kind of imagine what it's like. You've got a group of experts, and each one sort of has their own specialty, right? Maybe you have a safecracker, and maybe you have a getaway driver, and then you've got the person at the front who's like, okay, this is the casino that we're hitting, and this is why we're hitting it on this day, and because there's going to be a big, okay, I watch way too many of these. But so we all have sort of that shared common goal, right? The idea is that a product team can be a little bit like this. We all have that shared common goal. We all know what the shared common goal is, and we are all making decisions in our own area. But we're all making important decisions. So who needs to be in the room is a great question, because and I'm going to give the traditional user experience design answer, which is it depends. But it depends specifically on what specific question you're trying to answer at that time. I am a huge fan of collaborative cross-functional teams. I do not think that that means that we all do everything together in lockstep and everybody has to be completely involved in everything else. This is not groupthink. This is not, design by committee. It's not that. It's we all have a shared goal. So when we make the decision about what the shared goal is for the feature and when we decide what metric we care about, maybe the metric that we care about, that the company cares about deeply and that we really want to affect, maybe that's decided by upper management or the financial people. Maybe that's decided by the people who really understand what the business needs are the best, right? In collaboration and in discussion with other people who have input. When we're figuring out what the user needs are and what the user behavior is that we want to see changed and how to do that in an ethical way, right? Maybe it's the product and user experience people in collaboration with maybe the customer service people, if there are some, or maybe it's with sales who is going out and talking to our biggest customers, right? Also having discussions with engineering to make sure that nothing that we're recommending is impossible or really hard, right? When we're deciding what the database scheme is going to be, I don't really need to be there for that. I mean, maybe a little bit, but at a high level, we need to make sure that that the person deciding that has the goal, understands the problem, understands the proposed solution, understands what the hypothesis is, understands what we're trying to learn, and that they can make that decision in a smart way. So who needs to be in the room? I mean, everybody to understand what the goals and needs and approach is, and whoever the person is who is fundamentally making the decision about that particular thing. Does that help? It's a little vague, like all of my answers will be. Yes?
You had a slide earlier called "Don't design it if you can't build it." Or
Yes.
something to this effect. Do you mind elaborating a little bit on that?
Yes, you should not design things that you can't build. That's what the whole understanding what actually goes into the design is meant to help you with. Because like I said, I think a lot of times you'll get a design back from a designer or a product person, and everything kind of looks great, like everything kind of looks the same, but then when you start to think through all the different little pieces, all the little interactions that go into it, all of the data that needs to be put into there, I've seen designs come back from people that look fantastic if you already have 1 billion users, but there's literally nothing to get you from no users to 1 billion users. It's just, hey, here's how it's going to work when we have 1 billion people. Great. How's it going to look when we have 5, which is what we could conceivably get by next week? So don't get seduced by beautiful designs or screens or whatever if it's not a thing that is actually achievable, and you need to use some of these activities in order to understand if the thing that you have designed is achievable and what would actually go into achieving it, and if there is an easier way to do it.
But what if I can't build it today, but it inspires me to build it?
Sorry. So you can absolutely design anything you want as a hobby, or as inspiration, or if that helps you to come up with what the vision is, that's great. But at some point, you've got to design what you're building tomorrow, right? So that's a great question. It's sort of like, what if it helps me to sort of envision? Fantastic, go ahead, knock yourself out. But when you're actually designing the thing that you want to build, just make sure that you know what actually goes into building it. I think is all that's trying to get at. Mm-hmm.
So let's say that Snacks for Pets goes through a round of research and we find that there's a lot of little things that we want to change with it.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say in the product there's a smattering of things that we want to change, but with the goal of making a better user experience.
Uh-huh.
What are your recommendations on prioritizing all those?
What are the recommendations on prioritizing all those little usability fixes and things that, yeah, this is a great question, although I will point out that Snacks for Pets is perfect except for that one misspelling, which is, I just think that's how it should be spelled. Okay, so how do you prioritize when you come up with like a whole bunch of little things? So here's what I will say. Users, and probably your product, have a lot of problems, and you will not be able to solve all of them. So at some point, you are going to be saying like, do I solve this problem? Like, do I solve the worst problem? Or the easiest problem? Or the most fun problem? Or the thing that gets me to my eventual goal? And I think what you have to come back to is you have to ask yourself, what is the metric that this particular usability fix would improve? And is that something that I need to improve? And I see this a lot of times, because like, especially if you get a usability person in, and they give you this list of like, here are 10 things that you need to fix. Those 10 things might be really terrible, right? But maybe one of them is really going to help you with retention. And maybe one of them is really going to help you with new user onboarding. So what's your problem as a company? Is your problem retention, or is it user onboarding? Do you have a ton of people, but then they're all leaving after 10 seconds? Do you have, 12 really happy customers? So what matters to your company should come into what you decide to fix for users. There is also, as you probably know, the death of 1,000 cuts, where if you just make the user experience bad enough, people will eventually just leave. So you do have to fix some of them. And it is always good, even if you have very passionate long-term users and good retention, it is always good to occasionally fix things for your biggest, most important customers, just because they asked, because they're paying you a lot of money maybe, right? So, but you need to ask yourself, for each of these, and these are actually really good examples of sort of like features we could build, what am I getting out of it, right? Do that walking it back. What's the metric that this will fix? Is there a better way to do it? Is there a better way to improve this? And are there a bunch of things that we could fix all at once with like changing a bigger thing? Is there a bigger thing that we could change as opposed to just sort of like patching little holes, right? Do we actually need like a redesign on this? I mean, I hate redesigns, but anyway, we're almost to the end, so I just want to do a quick wrap up because I do want you to think about something. I want you to take a minute after we're done and just think about 3 things that you might do differently when you go back to work. Maybe not tomorrow if you have classes again tomorrow, but next week. What are 3 things that you think that hopefully you will do differently? What are 3 questions that or what's a question that you're going to start asking? How are you going to run meetings differently? So think about that, write it down. This is me again. If you're interested in hearing me blather on some more, there's a podcast where you can do that. And thank you so much. And I'll be around after if you want to ask questions.